The capture. On a distant alien planet, a lone human stood, far from home. His name was Jack, and he had been traveling through space for years. His mission was simple: explore new worlds, gather information, and report back to Earth. But things had gone terribly wrong. His ship, damaged by an unexpected asteroid field, had crashed on this strange, hostile planet. Now Jack was lost and alone, with no way to contact Earth. The planet was dark, the sky filled with strange purple clouds. The air was thick with an unfamiliar, almost suffocating scent. Jack tried to remain calm. He had been in tough situations before, but this time felt different. He felt like something was watching him. Something unseen. Something dangerous. As Jack wandered through the dense jungle, his heart raced. The trees were enormous, their leaves glowing in shades of blue and green. The ground was uneven, covered in alien plants that seemed to shift when he stepped on them. He kept looking over his shoulder, feeling an eerie presence lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, he heard something. Footsteps, quick and light, almost too quiet to hear. He stopped and turned around, but it was too late. From behind, a group of creatures emerged from the shadows. They were tall, with glowing yellow eyes and slick, metallic armor that reflected the dim light. Their faces were hidden behind strange masks, and their movements were precise, calculated. Before Jack could react, they surrounded him, their weapons drawn, and aimed at his chest. Who are you?" Jack demanded, trying to sound confident, even though his heart pounded in his chest. The aliens didn't answer. Instead, they grabbed him roughly, pulling his arms behind his back and binding them with thick, cold ropes. Jack struggled, but their strength was overpowering. He was no match for their advanced technology. Panic set in as Jack realized that these creatures weren't here to help him. They weren't interested in rescue. They were here for something else. He was their prisoner. As the aliens dragged him across the rough terrain, Jack tried to gather his thoughts. What did they want? Was this some kind of military force? Or worse, were they going to sell him to the highest bidder? His mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. The alien soldiers were silent as they moved, their eyes never leaving Jack's every movement. They communicated with each other in a strange language that sounded like a mixture of clicks and hisses. Jack couldn't understand a word, but the tone was clear. They were in charge, and he was their prisoner. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. Jack had lost track of time as they marched him deeper into the heart of the alien city. The landscape around him was otherworldly, buildings towering over him with strange, glowing symbols etched into their surfaces. The air buzzed with the hum of technology, the city alive with activity. But there was no joy here, no sign of peace. Everything felt cold, controlled, and relentless. Finally, they arrived at a large, circular structure in the center of the city. The building was surrounded by a high wall, with guards standing watch on every corner. Jack was forced to kneel in front of the massive doors as one of the aliens approached a glowing panel on the wall. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing an enormous chamber inside. The walls were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move as if alive. Inside the chamber stood a group of beings, different from the soldiers who had captured Jack. They were seated on thrones, their eyes glowing with a strange light. Their faces were unlike anything Jack had ever seen. Alien, yes, but also ancient, wise. The air in the room felt heavier, as though it was filled with some kind of invisible power. One of the beings, an alien with long flowing robes and a headdress made of shimmering metal, stepped forward. It was clear from the way the others looked at this figure that it held great power. The alien's voice was low and commanding as it spoke, though Jack could not understand the language. The alien leader raised a hand, and the soldiers who had captured Jack stepped back. A strange energy filled the room, and Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He had no idea what was happening, but he could feel the weight of their gaze upon him. This was not an ordinary interrogation. These beings were powerful, ancient, and they had plans for him. "What do you want with me?" Jack finally asked, his voice shaking. The alien leader tilted its head slightly, as if considering the question. Then it raised a hand again and pointed at Jack. The air around him seemed to crackle with energy. He felt his body tense, his heart racing as though it was trying to escape his chest. "I am not what you think," Jack said, more to himself than to the aliens. He could feel something deep inside him. A strange energy, a power he had never known before. It surged within him, like a spark waiting to ignite. Could it be that he wasn't just a helpless human after all? Was there something about him, something hidden deep within, that even the aliens couldn't see? But before he could think more about it, the alien leader spoke again, its voice cold and distant. The words were not meant for Jack, but for those in the room. "The human is not to be harmed, yet." The soldiers stared at Jack, their expressions unreadable behind their masks. Jack was confused, unsure of what the alien leader meant. "Yet," he repeated aloud, his voice trembling. But the leader simply turned away, dismissing him like a piece of furniture. Jack had no idea what would happen next. But one thing was certain: he was no longer just a lost explorer. He had become part of something much bigger, something he couldn't yet understand. But he would soon find out. And as the door closed behind him, the sense of danger only grew stronger. Something was coming, something that would change everything. The Oracle's unseen vision. The alien fortress was a place of power, filled with secrets older than the stars themselves. Its cold stone walls hummed with energy, as if the very structure of the building was alive. The soldiers dragged Jack deeper into its heart, unaware of the true significance of his presence. The council room was vast, an imposing chamber filled with glowing symbols etched into the floor and walls. In the center stood a throne, but no one sat upon it. Instead, a strange figure loomed in the middle of the room, hovering inches above the ground. It was the Oracle, an ancient being with eyes that seemed to pierce through time itself. Its skin was translucent, shimmering like the surface of a calm lake, and its voice echoed in the minds of those nearby, bypassing the need for speech. Jack felt an overwhelming presence as the Oracle's eyes turned toward him. There was something about this alien, something more ancient than anything he had ever encountered in his travels. The Oracle wasn't just a seer or a prophet. It was a living being woven from the very fabric of the universe. And in that instant, Jack could feel the Oracle's gaze reaching into his soul, seeking something that was hidden deep within him. The Oracle's voice reverberated in Jack's mind like a distant whisper. "You are not what you appear to be, human. The power you carry, it is older than you know." Jack's heart raced. He had no idea what this being was talking about, but he could feel the truth of the Oracle's words. There was something inside him, something primal, something that had been dormant, but now it stirred, waking from a deep slumber. The soldiers, standing in the background, looked at each other, their confusion growing. They had never seen the Oracle act like this before. It was as if it was sensing something it could not understand, something foreign to the galaxy. One of the high-ranking commanders stepped forward, his armor gleaming in the dim light of the chamber. "Oracle," he said, his voice cold and authoritative, "this human is to be sacrificed. He is of no importance to us." The Oracle did not respond immediately. Instead, its eyes closed, and it seemed to fall into a deep trance. For a moment, the room was silent, save for the soft hum of energy. Then, slowly, the Oracle's eyes opened once again, but this time they were filled with something new, uncertainty. "The sacrifice is a mistake," the Oracle whispered, its voice shaking slightly. "This human, he is the one who will change everything, the one the stars have marked." The council members, once sure of their plan, now shifted uncomfortably. They had never seen the Oracle so disturbed. The Oracle's role had always been to foresee the future with clarity, but now it was speaking of prophecies that had been buried long ago. "What do you mean?" the commander asked, his voice low with suspicion. You are speaking of the prophecy. The oracle nodded, its glowing eyes never leaving Jack. This human, he carries a power no one can understand. A power that will either unite the galaxies or tear them apart. The room erupted in chaos. The council members exchanged nervous glances, and some of them even began to argue amongst themselves. This was not the future they had anticipated. If the oracle's words were true, they could not afford to make the wrong decision. The human, once destined for a quick sacrifice, now stood at the center of something much bigger than anyone had imagined. Jack, still bound and kneeling before the oracle, felt the weight of their words settle on him. He could sense the power within him growing stronger, pushing against the constraints that held him. But what was this power? Was it his, or had it been lying dormant inside him all along? The oracle's vision seemed to hold the key to his survival, but it also carried a terrifying promise. If he was to accept this new role, he would have to change the fate of an entire galaxy. His thoughts raced as the oracle continued. You are not just a sacrifice, human. You are the catalyst. The choice will be yours, to stand and fight, or to fall with the rest of us. But before Jack could respond, the oracle's form flickered, its voice becoming distant. Time is running out. The commander looked at Jack with suspicion. What are you implying? He demanded. This human has nothing to offer. But the oracle remained silent, its gaze still fixed on Jack. There was no going back now. The forces of fate had already begun to move, and whether Jack was ready or not, he would soon have to face what was awakening within him. In the shadows, a low rumble echoed through the chamber, as if the planet itself was reacting to the oracle's words. Something dark and powerful was stirring, something that threatened to unravel the very fabric of the galaxy. And Jack, unwilling or not, was caught in the middle of it. The oracle's final words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. The time to awaken has come. Jack didn't know it yet, but his life was about to change forever. The choices ahead would determine the fate of everyone. And in the back of his mind, something whispered, you are more than just a human. The first trial. Awakening the power. The moment the oracle's words faded into the air, a strange shift took place. The room grew colder, the walls vibrating with an ominous energy that Jack couldn't explain. He could feel it. Something had been set in motion. His body trembled, but not from fear. It was as if his very cells were being rearranged, reshaped by a force that was beyond his understanding. The alien soldiers, still holding him captive, began to drag him once more through the fortress. Their grip was tighter now, their movements more urgent. As they led him deeper into the heart of the building, Jack tried to stay calm, his mind racing. What had the oracle meant by awakening? What was this power it spoke of? They came to a massive door, its surface covered in strange, swirling symbols that seemed to move with a life of their own. The commander pressed his hand to the door, and it slid open with a low, rumbling sound. Jack's heart skipped a beat as they entered the room, a vast, circular chamber lit by an eerie, unnatural glow. At the center of the room was a large stone pedestal, upon which rested a crystal that seemed to pulse with energy. Step forward, human, the commander barked. Jack was pushed toward the pedestal, his legs stiff with exhaustion and confusion. What was this place? What did they want him to do? Before he could ask, the commander's voice rang out again. This is the first of your trials. You will prove your worth, or you will be discarded. With those words, the door slammed shut behind him, trapping him alone in the chamber. The room seemed to pulse with life, the air thick with anticipation. The crystal on the pedestal shone brighter, drawing Jack toward it, its energy almost magnetic. He couldn't explain why, but he felt an overwhelming pull, a sense that he needed to touch it. Tentatively, Jack stepped forward, his heart racing. He reached out and placed his hand on the crystal. The moment his fingers made contact, a jolt of raw energy shot through him, surging from his fingertips and spreading throughout his body. It was as if every fiber of his being was being torn apart and rebuilt at once. Pain, heat, and cold flooded his senses, but in the midst of it all, something else stirred deep within him. A power that had been buried for so long finally awakened. He gasped as his vision blurred, and for a brief moment, he saw flashes of things he couldn't understand. Alien landscapes, distant stars, and faces he had never met. His body shuddered as the crystal's power flowed through him, sensing with his heartbeat, pulsing like a second life force. In that moment, he knew this power was his, and it had always been inside him. The oracle had spoken the truth, but why had it been dormant? Why had it been hidden? The room around him seemed to grow darker, the walls closing in as the power within him swirled violently. Jack could feel his muscles tense, his breath quickening, but he didn't know how to control it. It was like a storm, wild and untenable. Suddenly, the crystal cracked with a loud snap, sending a shockwave through the room. Jack fell to his knees, the pain overwhelming. For a split second, everything went black. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing. His body was no longer trembling. In fact, it felt stronger than ever. The energy that had surged through him was now inside, calm but powerful, like a storm held back by a wall. His senses were heightened. He could hear every sound in the room, feel every subtle vibration in the air. It was as if the entire planet had become a part of him. Jack blinked, trying to steady himself. He glanced around the room and realized something was different. The pedestal was gone. In its place, the alien soldiers were standing, weapons drawn, watching him. They had seen the power, his power, and now they knew he wasn't the helpless prisoner they thought he was. What happened? One of the soldiers muttered under his breath, taking a cautious step forward. But Jack wasn't focused on them. His mind was still reeling from the surge of power within him. He felt different, stronger, like a part of him had been awakened, a force he couldn't fully comprehend. And yet, he could feel it, ready to be used. It was a gift, but one he didn't understand. Then the commander stepped forward, his gaze narrowing. "You have passed the first trial." But that was only the beginning. Jack's eyes snapped to him. The beginning of what? "The trials to prove your worth," the commander replied coldly. "You may have awakened something within you, but that does not make you a leader. It does not make you worthy of the prophecy." Jack's pulse quickened, but he refused to back down. He wasn't just a tool to be used. He wasn't some sacrifice. He had a power inside him now, and he wasn't about to let it slip away. He didn't know what the trials were, or what his fate held, but he would face them head-on. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something bigger, something that would change everything. As the soldiers moved to surround him, Jack stood tall, ready to face whatever came next. He had passed the first trial, but the next one would be even more difficult. He could feel it in his bones. This was just the beginning. And the galaxy itself, it was about to change. The oracle's revelation, the hidden prophecy. The alien fortress felt like a prison now. The walls closed in tighter with every passing moment, the weight of Jack's new power pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. Though he had passed the first trial, something still felt off. There was a lingering question in his mind. Why was he here? What did the oracle see in him? Was he truly the one meant to change the galaxy? Or was he just a pawn in a game much larger than himself? The soldiers, who had once been sure of their mission to sacrifice him, now treated him with suspicion, even fear. They couldn't hide their curiosity about the power that had surged through him. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, even from their most advanced technology. Jack was no longer just a prisoner. He was something more, something they didn't yet understand. And they were about to find out that they would never fully control him. One day, as Jack sat in his cell, though cell felt like the wrong word for the room now, it was the oracle that came to him. No guards, no soldiers, just the oracle's presence. The air around him seemed to shimmer as the oracle appeared, not as a figure standing before him, but as a presence that filled the entire room. Human, the oracle's voice echoed in Jack's mind. You do not yet know the weight of your destiny. Jack felt his chest tighten. What destiny? What is this prophecy you keep talking about? The oracle's voice grew softer, more distant, yet still strong. You were born from the stars, Jack, not by chance, but by design. You carry within you a power that was meant to change the course of the universe, but you are not yet ready. You must understand the truth of your origins before you can accept the responsibility of what is to come. Jack's head spun. You're telling me I was made for this? What does that mean? I was just an explorer, a human trying to survive in the galaxy. Not just any human. You are the first of your kind to be born with the potential to unite or destroy. You were chosen long before you knew this world even existed. Your ancestors. The oracle paused, the words heavy with meaning. They were part of something much older than your species, part of a lost alliance that once united the galaxies under one banner. But that alliance was broken, torn apart by the forces that seek to control the stars. You are the key to restoring it. Jack was silent, struggling to process the oracle's words. His mind raced with questions, each one more difficult to answer than the last. But why me? Why not someone else? I'm just one person, one human. Why would anyone believe I could bring peace, or war, for that matter? The oracle's voice seemed to soften with a strange, almost maternal tone. You were chosen because of what you are, and what you are not. The galaxies have fallen into chaos, each race fighting for dominance. But none of them understand the true nature of power. You do, not because of your strength, but because of your spirit, your heart. Jack's pulse quickened. What are you saying? The human race, Jack, has always been underestimated. You fight when you have nothing left. You resist when all seems lost. You rise when you fall. These are the qualities the galaxy needs now. But first, you must awaken fully to the power within you. You cannot leave until you understand what you are capable of. Suddenly, the oracle's form seemed to flicker, as if the fabric of reality around it was unraveling. The air became charged with energy, and Jack felt a familiar warmth creeping up his spine. The same power he had felt during the first trial. It was inside him again, growing stronger. You are connected to something greater, Jack. The prophecy spoke of a being who would rise from the ashes of chaos. You were born for this purpose. The time has come for you to choose. To fulfill the prophecy and lead the races to unity, or to reject it, and watch the galaxy burn. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. The weight of the oracle's words settled deep within him, like a stone sinking into water. He had never asked for this. He had never wanted to be the savior of the galaxy. But the reality was undeniable. The oracle's power pulsed through him now, urging him to take action. He clenched his fists, feeling the raw energy surge through his veins. It was more than just power. It was conviction. It was his will to change the impossible. Before he could speak, the oracle's voice echoed once more, a warning. The choice will not be easy, Jack. The forces that oppose you are already moving. They know who you are now, and they will stop at nothing to prevent the prophecy from unfolding. Jack's mind raced. Forces that opposed him. Who were they? And what did this mean for his future? The oracle's final words were a whisper that seemed to reach into the depths of his soul. Trust in your heart, Jack. Only then will you find the strength to face the darkness that lies ahead. And with that, the oracle vanished, leaving Jack alone in the dim, cold cell once again. But this time, he wasn't the same man who had entered it. He had seen the truth about who he was, and what he was meant to do. The power inside him surged once more, and Jack knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but it was the path he had been born to walk. The galaxy was on the brink of destruction, and Jack, once a simple human explorer, was now the only one who could prevent it. The first step had been taken. Now he had to learn how to lead, how to unite the races, and how to face the darkness that threatened everything. He wasn't just a prisoner anymore. He was the key to the future. The decision. A choice between worlds. The weight of the Oracle's revelation hung heavy in the air as Jack sat alone in his chamber, his mind swirling with the truth of his origins. The prophecy, the power, the responsibility. It was all too much to grasp. He had been just an explorer, a man trying to survive in the vastness of space. But now, he was the central figure in a story that stretched across the galaxies. He could feel the enormity of his choices pressing down on him, each decision carving out the future. He could still hear the Oracle's voice echoing in his mind. The choice will be yours, to stand and fight, or to fall with the rest of us. Jack had always prided himself on being a survivor, a man who could think on his feet. But this was different. This wasn't about surviving. This was about deciding the fate of entire civilizations. As the days passed, Jack grew restless. The soldiers who once surrounded him now watched from a distance, uneasy and unsure of what to make of his transformation. Some whispered about the human who had the power to change the future, while others grew fearful of what he could become. But all Jack could think about was the path ahead. What was the right choice? He had been presented with two roads, one that led to unimaginable power, to uniting the races and bringing peace to the galaxy, and another that led to freedom, a return to Earth, and leaving the fate of the universe to others. Could he really take the mantle of leadership? Could he bring peace to a fractured galaxy filled with war, hate, and distrust? But as Jack paced the stone floor of his chamber, a new thought began to take root in his mind. What if neither of these paths was the right one? What if there was a third choice, one that no one had considered? A way to preserve the strength and spirit of his people, while avoiding the endless cycle of violence that plagued the universe. As if on cue, a soft, familiar voice echoed in his mind again, the Oracle's voice cutting through the confusion. There is always a third path, Jack, but it is not one you can take alone. You will need the courage to forge your own destiny, free from the chains of those who would control you. Jack's heart raced. He had spent so much time thinking about the choices in front of him, but the Oracle's words made him realize something he had missed. This wasn't about following a prophecy. It was about making his own way, creating a new future. But how? And with whom? The door to his chamber suddenly opened, breaking Jack from his thoughts. Standing in the doorway was the alien commander, the same one who had once thought of Jack as nothing more than a prisoner, a sacrifice. But now, the commander's face was unreadable. There was a new kind of respect in his eyes, though it was tempered by something else. Distrust. "The Oracle has spoken of your power," the commander said quietly, stepping inside. "But power alone does not make one a leader. It is the will to fight for something greater than yourself that determines your true strength." Jack looked up at the commander, feeling a strange tension in the air. He had no love for the aliens who had captured him, but he couldn't deny that there was a deeper truth in the commander's words. Leadership wasn't about the power to crush your enemies. It was about what you stood for, about what you were willing to sacrifice for the greater good. "I don't want to be a tool in someone else's war," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "I don't want to be a puppet. I've seen enough of that in my own people's history." The commander nodded, as if understanding more than Jack had expected. "You are not the first to question your purpose, human. Many of us have struggled with this, even before you arrived. The galaxy is divided, broken by years of bloodshed and mistrust. But perhaps you can be the spark that ignites a new era." Jack felt a cold shiver run through him. He knew what this meant. He had two options in front of him, and he couldn't ignore them any longer. He could either accept the path laid out by the Oracle, stand as the beacon of unity, and lead the charge to rebuild the broken alliance, or he could turn his back on it, return to Earth, and live a quiet life, leaving the galaxy to burn. "Choose carefully." The Oracle's voice echoed once more, distant and filled with caution. "Your decision will shape the fate of more than just the stars." It will determine the future of everything that exists. Jack's mind raced, the weight of it all settling deeper into his chest. Was he ready to embrace the mantle of leadership? Was he strong enough to bear the burden of a galaxy at war? And even if he did, could he trust those around him, the alien races who saw him as both a threat and a savior? But then something else emerged in his mind. A vision, a dream of the galaxy, united, peaceful, with each race standing side by side. The dream felt real, not like a fantasy, but a future that was waiting to unfold. He could feel it deep within himself, an undeniable pull. This wasn't just about him. This was about every life that had ever been touched by conflict. He made his decision. "Prepare the council," Jack said, his voice strong and clear. "It's time to make the galaxy see what it can become." For the first time since he arrived, Jack felt a surge of clarity. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The time to make his stand had arrived. He wasn't just going to follow the prophecy. He was going to rewrite it, and in doing so, create something entirely new. And so, with a heart full of resolve, Jack prepared himself for what lay ahead. The galaxy was about to witness the rise of something extraordinary, something no one had expected. The future was his to shape, and he would do whatever it took to ensure that it was a future worth fighting for. The hidden power unleashed. A new leader is born. The decision was made. There was no turning back now. Jack stood before the council, the leaders of the alien races who had once seen him as a mere human, a prisoner, a tool to be used for their own ends. Now they were looking at him with something different in their eyes: wariness, curiosity, and perhaps a flicker of respect. But Jack was no longer the man they had captured and chained. He had tapped into a force within himself that he could no longer ignore. The Oracle had spoken of his power, but it was only now, in this moment of absolute clarity, that he truly understood what it meant. He was not just a vessel for some ancient prophecy. He was the catalyst, the one who would forge a new future, if he had the courage to take that first step. As Jack stepped into the chamber, the eyes of the council fixed on him, their expressions unreadable. The room was silent except for the low hum of alien technology in the background. At the center of the room stood a massive holographic map of the galaxy, showing the various territories controlled by different alien races, some fractured by war, others bound by fragile alliances. It was a map that represented everything that was wrong with the universe. It was a world teetering on the edge of destruction. Jack, the commander, spoke first, his voice steady but cautious. "You are here to speak of your vision, of what you believe can unite us. But know this, we have seen many rise before you, claiming they had the answer to our problems. What makes you different?" Jack's gaze never wavered. He had no intention of convincing them with words alone. It was time to show them what he could do. With a deep breath, he raised his hand, and the room seemed to pulse with energy. The power within him, the one that had been dormant for so long, surged to the surface. It wasn't just his physical strength anymore. It was a power that connected him to the very fabric of the galaxy itself. He could feel the energy of the stars, the planets, the people who lived on them, each one vibrating with life, with potential. For a moment, the entire room went still. Jack's hand glowed with an ethereal light as he focused, pulling energy from the galaxy's very core. He wasn't just commanding power. He was tapping into something far deeper. The ground beneath him hummed, and the holographic map flickered, responding to his command. The image of the fractured galaxy began to shift, its borders moving and reshaping as Jack's power flowed through the chamber. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. This was unlike anything they had ever seen. The power Jack wielded was not of their making. It was something else, something ancient and vast. It was as if he had become a living conduit for the energy that flowed through the universe itself. "What is this?" One of the council members gasped, their voice trembling with both awe and fear. Jack's voice was calm, steady. "This is what I am now. This is what the Oracle saw. I am not here to rule with fear or oppression. I am here to show you that the galaxies don't have to be broken. We can rebuild them, not by force, but by unity, by connecting the races, the planets, the people. I don't just command power. I understand it. I understand the pulse of the galaxy, and I'm offering that to you. A new path forward. The council sat in stunned silence. Jack's words were powerful, yes, but it was the energy that radiated from him that held them in place. The very fabric of the room seemed to bend around his presence, as though the galaxy itself was acknowledging him as its rightful leader. His power was not just a force, it was a bridge to something much greater. As Jack lowered his hand, the holographic map solidified, showing not just the territories of war, but the potential for cooperation. New alliances, new pathways to peace, new borders that could unite rather than divide. It was a vision of what could be, not just a fantasy. His power was the key to unlocking a future they hadn't dared to imagine. The commander stepped forward, his voice heavy with both uncertainty and recognition. You speak of unity, but what of those who do not wish to join? The factions, the warlords, the ones who thrive on chaos. How will you bring them to your side? Jack's gaze hardened. By showing them that chaos is not strength. That power built on fear is fleeting. The strength of the galaxy lies in its diversity, in its many races, cultures, and ideas. We can't fight the darkness by becoming it. But if we unite, we can drive it out, together. The room was silent, the weight of Jack's words settling over the council like a heavy blanket. Slowly, the leader of one of the more powerful factions stood. Their eyes were wary, but there was a flicker of something else, a spark of hope. We've seen what you can do, the leader said, their voice low and measured. But what will we have to give in return? What will we lose in this new world you speak of? Jack didn't hesitate. You won't lose anything that matters. You will gain everything that has been denied to you: peace, prosperity, and a future that isn't ruled by fear. This is not just my fight, it's all of ours. The council fell into deep discussion, their voices rising and falling in a mixture of doubt and curiosity. But Jack knew the truth now. He was no longer just a participant in this galaxy's story. He was the one who would write its future. And with every word, with every action, his power grew, not just as a leader, but as a symbol of something greater: hope. As the meeting drew to a close, the commander looked at Jack, his eyes filled with something Jack had never seen before: respect. Perhaps there is something to what you say. We will follow your lead. But be warned, the forces of chaos will not relent easily. Jack nodded, his eyes alight with determination. I know, but I am ready. For the first time since he had arrived on this alien world, Jack felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had unlocked the power within himself, but it was more than just the energy of the stars. It was the strength of conviction, the power of unity. The galaxy was his to lead, and with the power he now commanded, he would change it forever. The hidden power was no longer just a force. It was Jack's heart, his will, and the future of a galaxy waiting to be united. The battle for the future, uniting the stars. The galaxy was teetering on the edge of collapse. For centuries, it had been a place of chaos, fueled by endless war, betrayal, and mistrust. The races that once coexisted in a fragile alliance had fractured, each one vying for power, driven by their own agendas. But Jack had broken through the barriers of fear and division, uniting the fractured factions with his vision of peace. Now, as the leader who had emerged from the depths of conflict, it was time to face the ultimate test. A war was brewing, one final battle that would determine whether the galaxy would fall into darkness or rise into a new era. The forces of chaos, led by those who thrived on division, had united under a single banner, and they were marching toward the heart of the galaxy. Their goal was simple: to crush the fragile alliance Jack had built and plunge the universe back into bloodshed. Jack stood before a vast command center, surrounded by the leaders of the newly formed coalition. The alien council had transformed from a group of skeptics to true allies, each one now bound to a common cause. But even with their support, Jack knew the path ahead would not be easy. The enemy they faced was relentless, and the power they wielded was immense. "This is it," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of what was to come. "We've spent years fighting against each other. Now we have one chance to unite and defeat this enemy before it destroys everything we've worked for. We don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for the future, for peace." The room fell silent as the leaders nodded in agreement. It was clear that Jack's words had struck a chord with them. They were no longer just warriors. They were defenders of a cause greater than themselves. The map of the galaxy shimmered before them, showing the approaching forces of chaos. They had taken position near the central hub of the galaxy, a place of immense strategic importance. If they were allowed to control it, they would be able to destabilize every corner of the universe. The battle for the future would begin there. "Jack," one of the commanders spoke, their voice laced with concern. "This enemy, they are unlike anything we've faced before. Their forces are vast, and they are relentless. How can we hope to win?" Jack turned to face them, his eyes burning with resolve. He could feel the power inside him surging once more, a force that connected him not just to the galaxy, but to its very soul. This was his moment. This was the battle that would define everything he had fought for. The prophecy that had once seemed like a distant dream was now a reality, and he would lead them to victory. "We will win," Jack said, his voice firm. "Not because we are stronger, but because we are united. This battle is about more than just weapons or tactics. It's about belief. We believe in each other. We believe in the future we've built together. And we believe that no force can stand against that." The council members exchanged glances, each one feeling the weight of Jack's words settle within them. There was no turning back now. This was the final stand, the moment where everything would be decided. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, but Jack wasn't afraid. He had faced the unknown before, and he would do so again. The warships of their united fleet moved into position, each one representing a different race, a different culture, now bound together by a single cause. The enemy's fleet loomed on the horizon, a shadow of destruction. It was clear that they would stop at nothing to destroy the fragile peace Jack had forged. But Jack had something they didn't: hope. The first wave of enemy ships charged forward, their weapons crackling with energy, ready to tear through the lines of the united fleet. The skies above the battlefield erupted in a brilliant display of fire and light as the two forces collided. It was chaos, flashes of laser fire, explosions rippling through the stars. But through it all, Jack remained calm. He closed his eyes and reached deep within himself, tapping into the power that surged through him. This time, it wasn't just about controlling the energy. It was about harnessing it, focusing it with the intent to protect, to heal, to unite. With a single thought, Jack's power spread across the battlefield like a wave. The energy flowed out from him, sweeping through the ships of his allies, reinforcing their shields, amplifying their weapons. They were no longer just fighters. They were part of something greater. They were one. As the wave of energy surged outward, Jack felt the bonds of unity between the races strengthen, their spirits connected by the shared will to protect what they had fought for. The power wasn't just in their ships or their weapons. It was in their hearts, their shared belief in the future. And with that, they were unstoppable. The enemy's fleet faltered, their ships suddenly overwhelmed by the sheer force of the united front. The tables were turning, and Jack could feel the tide of battle shift in their favor. The enemy, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves struggling against a force they couldn't comprehend: unity, strength, and hope. But just as victory seemed within reach, a new threat emerged from the enemy's ranks. A massive warship, unlike anything they had seen before, emerged from the darkness. Its weapon systems were unlike anything in their arsenal, capable of tearing through entire fleets with a single shot. The ship loomed ominously, its presence casting a shadow over the battlefield. Jack's heart sank. This was their final test. But as the warship charged up its weapons, preparing to fire, Jack knew there was only one way to stop it. He reached deep within himself, focusing every ounce of energy into a single concentrated blast. The power he had cultivated over the past months, the power of unity, hope, and resolve, was now ready to be unleashed in its full force. He raised his hand toward the warship, and for the first time, the galaxy itself seemed to respond to his will. A wave of light erupted from Jack's hand, more brilliant than any star. The energy shot forward, cutting through the vastness of space and colliding with the warship in a blinding explosion. When the light faded, the warship was no more. The battlefield went silent. The enemy fleet, now leaderless and shattered, retreated into the void. Jack's forces had won. The galaxy was saved. But the victory was not just in the battle. It was in the promise of what was to come. The galaxy, once divided, now stood united. Jack had done what no one thought possible. He had brought peace to a universe on the brink of destruction. As he looked out at the stars, Jack felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was the beginning, not the end. The future was in their hands, and together they would shape it. The galaxy was no longer a place of war and fear. It was a place of hope, and that hope would burn brighter than the stars themselves.